the smell of old wood, and dust hit me the moment I pushed open the front door of my grandmother's house. It had been sitting empty for 3 months since she passed, and the air inside felt thick, almost solid, like walking through invisible curtains of memory and neglect. Sunlight struggled to the grimy windows, casting pale yellow rectangles across the hardwood floors that creaked under my feet with every step. The house was cold despite the summer heat outside, as if the walls themselves were mourning. I stood in the entryway, my hand still on the brass doorknob that felt sticky with age, and listened to the silence. It was not peaceful. It was a kind of silence that pressed against your eardrums, broken only by the distant hum of a refrigerator that someone had forgotten to unplug and the occasional groan of old pipes settling deeper into their foundations. My throat tightened as I breathed in the scent of her lavender sachets mixed with something mustier, something that spoke of time passing and things left behind. My name is Claire Whitmore, and I am 32 years old. I had driven 6 hours from Boston to this small town in upstate New York, a place I had not visited in over a decade. The family had decided I would be the one to sort through Grandma Rose's belongings, to decide what to keep, what to sell, what to throw away. My brother Marcus claimed he was too busy with his law practice. My sister Diane said she could not handle the emotional weight. My mother, Rose's daughter, simply refused to come at all. She had not spoken to her own mother in 15 years, a rift so deep and so bitter that even at the funeral, she stood at the back of the church and left before the burial. I set my bag down on the faded floral couch in the living room, and a small cloud of dust rose up, dancing in the shaft of light. The furniture was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits. The same green armchair with the worn armrests, the same coffee table with the water ring stains that Grandma Rose never managed to remove, the same photographs on the mantel, their frames tarnished and their images fading behind dusty glass. I walked over to look at them, my footsteps echoing in the empty house. There was my grandfather, dead 20 years now, standing in his military uniform, young and serious. There was my mother as a little girl, maybe 7 or 8, holding a doll and smiling with missing front teeth. There was a wedding photo, my grandparents looking impossibly young and hopeful. And there was one of all of us, taken during what must have been the last good summer, before everything fell apart. I was maybe 9 years old in that picture. Marcus was 12, Diane was 6. We were all grinning, sunburned and happy, with Grandma Rose in the center, her arms around as many of us as she could reach. I picked up the frame and wiped the dust away with my sleeve. The glass was cold against my fingers. I tried to remember what had happened that summer, why it was the last time we had all been together like that, but the memory was hazy, like trying to see through fog. I knew that shortly after, my mother had stopped bringing us to visit. I knew there had been arguments, voices raised behind closed doors, my mother's face red and tear-streaked as we drove away for what I did not know would be the final time. But I had been a child, and children are kept away from the Dunshang, protected from the ugly truths that adults hoard like poisonous secrets. I set the frame back down and moved through the house, opening doors, taking inventory. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the cinnamon rolls Grandma Rose used to make, though that was impossible. It had been months. Maybe the scent had soaked into the walls, into the wooden cabinets, into the very foundation of the house. The bedrooms upstairs were neat, beds made with quilts that Grandma Rose had stitched herself, each one a riot of colors and patterns. Her own bedroom was the largest, and I stood in the doorway for a long moment before entering, feeling like an intruder. Her reading glasses were still on the nightstand. A book lay open, face down, marking a page she would never finish. The closet door was slightly ajar, and I could see her dresses hanging in a neat row, could smell the mothballs and that particular scent that was just hers, a mixture of soap and powder and something floral I could never quite name. My eyes stung, and I blinked hard, refusing to cry. I had a job to do. I could grieve later. I spent the first day just walking through the house, making lists, taking photographs of my siblings. The basement was last, and I saved it because I had always been a little afraid of it as a child. The stairs were steep and wooden, and they groaned under my weight as I descended into the cool darkness. I fumbled for the light switch, and a single bare bulb flickered to life, casting harsh shadows across the concrete floor and a jumble of boxes, old furniture, and forgotten belongings that filled the space. It smelled different down here, damp and earthy, with a metallic tang that made me think of rust and old pennies. The ceiling was low, and I had to duck under exposed pipes as I made my way through the narrow paths between stacks of boxes. Most were labeled in Grandma Rose's careful handwriting. Christmas decorations. Tax records 1970 through 1980. Marcus baby clothes. I smiled at that one, imagining my serious, suit-wearing brother as a baby. I was about to head back upstairs when I noticed something odd. In the far corner of the basement, behind an old dresser that looked like it had not been moved in decades, the wall looked different. The concrete was a slightly different shade, and there were marks on the floor, scrapes in the dust that suggested the dresser had been moved recently. My heart started to beat a little faster. I set down the box I was holding and approached the dresser, running my hand along its side. It was heavy, solid wood, but when I put my shoulder against it and pushed, it moved more easily than I expected. Someone had moved it before, and recently enough that it had not settled back into place. I shoved harder, my shoes slipping on the concrete, and slowly, inch by inch, the dresser scraped across the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet basement, a harsh scraping that set my teeth on edge. Behind the dresser, set into the concrete wall, at about waist height, was a safe. It was old, the kind with a combination dial, and the metal was spotted with rust. My breath caught in my throat. I had never known this was here. In all my childhood visits, in all the stories Grandma Rose had told, she had never mentioned a safe. I reached out and touched it, and the metal was cold and rough under my fingertips. I stood there for a long moment, just staring at the safe, my mind racing. Why would Grandma Rose have a hidden safe? What could be inside that needed to be locked away, hidden behind furniture in a basement corner where no one would think to look? I tried the dial, turning it slowly, feeling the mechanism click under my fingers. But of course it was locked. I had no idea what the combination might be. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus. He answered on the third ring, and I could hear the sounds of his office in the background. Phones ringing, people talking. He sounded distracted, impatient. I told him about the safe, and there was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Do you think there is money in it?" he asked finally, and I could hear the shift in his tone, the sudden interest. "Maybe bonds or jewelry or something valuable. You should try to open it." "I do not know the combination," I said, running my free hand through my hair. "Did Grandma Rose ever mention anything like this to you?" "No, never," he said. "Try her birthday. Or Grandpa's. People always use birthdays or anniversaries for combinations. Let me know what you find. I have to get back to a meeting." He hung up before I could say anything else. I looked at the safe again, then back at my phone. I called Diane next, but she did not answer. She rarely did. I left a message, then climbed back upstairs, my mind spinning with possibilities. I found an old photo album in the living room and flipped through it, looking for dates. Grandma Rose's birthday was June 14th, 1928. I did the math in my head. 6/14/28. Or maybe just a month and day, 6/14. I went back down to the basement, my footsteps quick on the stairs, and knelt in front of the safe. The concrete floor was hard and cold against my knees, even through my jeans. I tried 6/14/28 first, turned the dial carefully, right, then left, then right again, the way I had seen people do in movies. Nothing. The handle would not budge. I tried just 6/14. Nothing. I tried Grandpa's birthday, March 3rd, 1926. Nothing. I tried their anniversary, October 10th, 1947. Still nothing. Frustration built in my chest, hot and tight. I sat back on my heels and stared at the safe, as if I could will it to open through sheer determination. The basement was getting darker as the sun moved across the sky, and the single bulb seemed dimmer, casting longer shadows. I shivered, suddenly aware of how cold it was down here, how alone I was in this big empty house. I went back upstairs and spent the rest of the evening going through drawers and boxes, looking for anything that might give me a clue. I found old bills and receipts, letters from friends long dead, recipes written in Grandma Rose's shaky handwriting. I found my mother's report cards from elementary school, all straight A's with teacher comments about what a bright, delightful student she was. I found a lock of baby hair in a small envelope, labeled with my name and a date. But I found nothing that looked like a combination. No mysterious string of numbers circled or underlined. As night fell, the house seemed to grow even quieter, even colder. I made myself a sandwich from the supplies I had brought and ate it standing at the kitchen counter, too restless to sit. The refrigerator hummed and clicked off, and in the sudden silence, I could hear the house settling around me, creaks and groans that sounded almost like footsteps, like whispers. I told myself I was being ridiculous, that it was just an old house doing what old houses do, but I left lights on in every room as I made my way upstairs to the guest bedroom where I had decided to sleep. The bed was soft but smelled musty, and I lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and listening to the unfamiliar sounds. I thought about my mother, about the anger that had lived in her for so long, hard and bitter like a stone in her chest. I thought about Grandma Rose, alone in this house for so many years, estranged from her only daughter, seeing her grandchildren only in photographs that we sent dutifully at Christmas. What had happened between them? What could cause a wound so deep that it never healed, not even at the end? I must have finally fallen asleep because I woke with a start to sunlight streaming through the window and birds singing outside. My neck was stiff and my mouth tasted sour. I checked my phone and saw that it was almost 9 in the morning. There was a text from Diane. Sent at 2 in the morning. Sorry I missed your call. What is going on? I texted her back, explaining about the safe, and she responded almost immediately. That is so weird. Mom never said anything about a safe. Maybe you should just call a locksmith? The idea had not occurred to me, and I felt foolish for not thinking of it sooner. Of course, a locksmith could open it. I did a quick search on my phone and found one in town, a place called Anderson's Lock and Key. I called, and a man with a gravelly voice said he could come out that afternoon around 2 o'clock. The fee would be $150, more if it was a complicated lock. I agreed and gave him the address. I spent the morning continuing to sort through the house, but my mind kept drifting back to the safe. What was inside? Why had it been hidden? The questions circled in my head like birds, never landing, never settling. I found myself checking my phone every few minutes, willing time to move faster. At exactly 2 o'clock, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. I looked out the window and saw a white van with Anderson's Lock and Key painted on the side in blue letters. A man got out, older, maybe 60, with a thick gray beard and a tool belt slung around his waist. I met him at the door, and he introduced himself as Bill Anderson, shaking my hand with a grip that was firm and calloused. I led him down to the basement, and he let out a low whistle when he saw the safe. That is an old one, he said, kneeling down in front of it and running his hands over the dial, probably from the 1950s or 60s. Good quality, though. They made them to last back then. Can you open it? I asked, and he nodded. Oh, sure, he said. It will take me a little while, but I can get it open. You might want to go upstairs, though. This can be tedious to watch. I shook my head. I will stay, I said, and he shrugged. Suit yourself, he said, and got to work. He was right that it was tedious. He pressed his ear against the safe, turning the dial slowly, listening for clicks and changes in the sound that I could not hear. He made notes on a small pad of paper, tried combinations. Listen again. The basement was silent, except for the soft clicking of the dial and his occasional muttered comments to himself. I sat on an old wooden crate and watched, my hands clasped between my knees, my heart beating faster than it should. After what felt like hours, but was probably 45 minutes, Bill sat back and smiled. Got it, he said. He turned the dial one more time, and I heard a solid clunk as the lock disengaged. He turned the handle, and the safe door swung open with a creak of old hinges. I stood up so fast, I almost knocked over the crate. Bill stepped aside, and I moved closer, peering into the dark interior of the safe. It was not very deep, maybe a foot, and it was not full. There were a few items inside, and I reached in with trembling hands to pull them out. The first thing I grabbed was a stack of letters, maybe 20 or 30 of them, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. The envelopes were yellow with age, and the stamps were old, the kind you do not see anymore. I set them aside carefully and reached in again. There was a small velvet box, the kind that holds jewelry. I opened it and found a ring inside, gold with a small diamond, tarnished but still beautiful. It was not Grandma Rose's wedding ring. I had seen that ring, and it was different, larger, with a different setting. I set the ring aside and pulled out the last item. It was a photograph, larger than the ones on the mantel, maybe 8 by 10 inches. The edges were worn, and the colors had faded to that particular palette of old photographs. The reds too red, the blues too blue, everything slightly unreal. I turned it over and looked at it, and my breath caught in my throat. It was a photograph of a young woman holding a baby. The woman was maybe 20, with dark hair and a shy smile. She was sitting in a chair, and the baby in her arms was tiny, wrapped in a white blanket. On the back of the photograph, in handwriting I did not recognize, were 3 words and a date. Our sweet girl, May 1963. I stared at the photograph, my mind struggling to make sense of what I was seeing. The woman was not Grandma Rose. I was sure of that. Grandma Rose had been blonde, and this woman had dark hair, and the date was wrong. My mother had been born in 1955, not 1963. So who was this woman? Who was this baby? Bill cleared his throat behind me, and I jumped, having almost forgotten he was there. You find what you were looking for? He asked. I do not know, I said honestly. I do not know what I found. He packed up his tools, and I paid him, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. He left, and I heard the van pull away, but I stayed in the basement, sitting on the cold concrete floor with the letters and the ring and the photograph spread out in front of me. I picked up the stack of letters and untied the ribbon. My hands were shaking. The first envelope was addressed to Rose Whitmore at this address, and the return address was from somewhere in Pennsylvania, a town I had never heard of. The postmark was from June 1963. I slid the letter out of the envelope carefully. The paper was thin and fragile, and it crackled slightly as I unfolded it. The letter was written in the same handwriting as the note on the back of the photograph. It was dated June 5th, 1963, and it began, Dear Rose, I know you said not to write, but I had to let you know that we arrived safely, and the baby is doing well. She is such a good baby, hardly cries at all, and she has your eyes, Rose. I see you every time I look at her. I know this is hard. I know you think you made the right choice, but I want you to know that if you ever change your mind, if you ever want to see her, you can. We would never keep her from you. She is your daughter, no matter what the papers say. Please think about it. Please do not shut us out completely. With love, Margaret. I read the letter 3 times, and each time the words seemed to rearrange themselves, to mean something different, something impossible. She is your daughter, the baby in the photograph. Grandma Rose's daughter. But that could not be right. My mother was Grandma Rose's only child. Everyone knew that. It was family history, family fact. Unless it was not, my hands were numb as I reached for the next letter. It was dated 2 months later, August 1963. Dear Rose, I have not heard from you, and I am worried. Please write back, even if it is just to tell me you are okay. The baby, we have named her Sarah, is growing so fast. She smiled for the first time yesterday, and it broke my heart that you were not here to see it. I understand why you did what you did. I know it was not easy. But please, Rose, do not disappear from her life completely. She deserves to know you. We both do. Love, Margaret. I went through the letters one by one, and they painted a picture that made my stomach twist and my chest ache. Margaret and her husband, whose name was Thomas, had adopted a baby girl in May of 1963. The baby's birth mother was Rose, my grandmother. The letters spanned several years, growing less frequent as time went on, and the tone shifted from hopeful to sad to resigned. The last letter was dated December 1968, and it was short. Dear Rose, this will be my last letter. You have made it clear that you do not want contact, and I have to respect that, even though it hurts. Sarah's 5 years old now, and she is beautiful and smart and kind. She asks about you sometimes, because I have told her she was adopted, and I tell her that her birth mother loved her very much but could not keep her. I hope that is true. I hope you did love her, even if you could not show it. I will not write again, but know that if you ever change your mind, our door is always open. The address is the same. Goodbye, Rose. Love, always, Margaret. I sat in the basement as the light faded and the shadows grew long, and I cried. I cried for Grandma Rose, who had given up a baby and locked away the evidence of her existence in a safe in the basement. I cried for Sarah, whoever she was, wherever she was, who had grown up not knowing her birth mother. I cried for my own mother, who had grown up as an only child, never knowing she had a sister out there somewhere. And then I stopped crying and started to get angry. Why had Grandma Rose kept this secret? Why had she never told anyone? My mother had a sister, a half-sister at least, and she had never known. I had an aunt I had never met. Marcus and Diane had an aunt. This was not just Grandma Rose's secret to keep. This affected all of us. I gathered up the letters and the photograph and the ring and carried them upstairs. I laid them out on the kitchen table under the harsh fluorescent light and took photographs of everything with my phone. Then I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice wary. "Claire, is everything okay?" "No," I said, and my voice sounded strange, tight and high. "No, everything is not okay. I found something in Grandma Rose's house. Something you need to know about." There was a pause. And then she said, "I told you I did not want to be involved in sorting through her things. Whatever you found, just deal with it." "Mom," I said, and I heard my voice crack. "I found letters and a photograph." Grandma Rose had another daughter. In 1963, she gave her up for adoption. The silence on the other end of the line was so complete that I thought the call had dropped. I pulled the phone away from my ear to check. But no, we were still connected. "Mom," I said, "did you hear me?" When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "What did you say?" I repeated it, slower this time, and I heard her breath catch. "That is not possible," she said. "That is not true. You are wrong." "I am looking at the letters right now," I said, "from the adoptive mother. Her name was Margaret. The baby's name was Sarah." "Mom, you have a sister." I heard a sound on the other end, something between a gasp and a sob. Then I heard my father's voice in the background, asking what was wrong, and my mother saying something I could not make out. There was fumbling, and then my father was on the line. "Claire, what is going on? Your mother is very upset." I explained it again, and he listened in silence. When I finished, he let out a long breath. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. "Are you absolutely certain?" "I am looking at the evidence right now," I said. "Letters, a photograph, everything. It is real, Dad." "Okay," he said, and his voice was calm, steady, the voice of a man who had spent 30 years as a high school principal dealing with crises. "Okay, send us the photographs. Let us see what you found. And Claire, do not tell your brother or sister yet. Let us figure out what this means first." I agreed and hung up. I sent the photographs of my mother's email, then sat at the kitchen table and stared at the letters. The house was dark now except for the kitchen light, and outside the windows I could see nothing but my own reflection, pale and tired and confused. My phone rang an hour later. It was my mother, and she had been crying. I could hear it in her voice, the thickness, the way she had to clear her throat before she could speak. I saw the photographs. She said, "I do not understand. Why would she do this? Why would she give away a baby and never tell anyone?" "I do not know," I said. "The letters say she did not want contact. Margaret tried to reach out for years, but Grandma Rose never responded." My mother was quiet for a long moment, and then she said something that surprised me. "I need to come there. I need to see this for myself. I will drive up tomorrow." "Are you sure?" I asked. "I know this house is hard for you." "I am sure," she said. "I will be there by noon." She hung up, and I sat in the silence, feeling the weight of what I had uncovered pressing down on me like a physical thing. I thought about calling Marcus and Diane, but I remembered my father's words. "Wait, let us figure out what this means first." So I went to bed instead, climbing the stairs slowly, leaving the letters on the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. I did not sleep well. I kept waking up, my mind churning with questions that had no answers. When I finally gave up and got out of bed, the sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky outside the window in shades of pink and orange. I made coffee in Grandma Rose's old percolator, and the familiar sound of it bubbling and the rich smell that filled the kitchen were comforting in a way I had not expected. I spent the morning cleaning, needing something to do with my hands, something to occupy my mind. I dusted and vacuumed and washed windows, and by the time I heard a car pull into the driveway at 12:15, the house looked better than it had in months. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to the door. My mother looked older than I remembered. It had only been a few months since I had seen her at Grandma Rose's funeral, but something about her seemed diminished, smaller. Her hair, which she usually kept carefully colored, was showing gray at the roots, and there were deep lines around her mouth and eyes. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, and she clutched her purse in front of her like a shield. "Hi, Mom," I said, and she nodded but did not smile. She stepped into the house and stopped, looking around with an expression I could not read. "It smells the same," she said quietly. "After all these years, it still smells exactly the same." I led her to the kitchen and showed her the letters, the photograph, the ring. She sat down at the table and picked up each item carefully, as if they might crumble in her hands. She read every letter, and I watched her face change as she did, watched the emotions flicker across it like shadows. Confusion, disbelief, hurt, anger. When she finished the last letter, she set it down and pressed her hands flat against the table, staring at them. "I do not understand," she said finally. "I was born in 1955. This baby, Sarah, was born in 1963. That means my mother had another child 8 years after she had me. Why would she give that baby away but keep me? What was different?" I had been wondering the same thing. "Maybe it had something to do with Grandpa," I said. "Maybe he did not want another child. Or maybe they could not afford it." My mother shook her head. "That does not make sense. My father adored children. He would have been thrilled to have another daughter. And they were not wealthy, but they were not poor either. He had a good job at the factory. There is something else, something we're not seeing." She stood up and walked through the house, and I followed her. She went from room to room, touching things, picking them up and setting them down, as if she were looking for clues. In Grandma Rose's bedroom, she opened a closet and stood there for a long time, just looking at the dresses hanging in their neat row. "I used to play in here when I was little," she said. "I would put on her shoes and her jewelry and pretend I was a grown-up. She would laugh and tell me I was beautiful. She was a good mother, Claire. She really was. That is what makes this so hard to understand." We went back downstairs, and my mother made herself a cup of tea. She sat at the kitchen table, wrapping her hands around the mug, as if she were cold, even though the house was warm. "I need to find her," she said suddenly. "Sarah, I need to find my sister." I had been thinking the same thing, but I had not wanted to say it out loud, had not wanted to push. "Do you think that is a good idea?" I asked carefully. "It has been over 60 years. She might not want to be found. She might not want to know about us." My mother looked at me, and her eyes were fierce. "I do not care," she said. "I have a sister. I have spent my entire life thinking I was an only child, and now I find out that is a lie. I need to know why. I need to understand what happened, and I need to meet her, even if it is just once." I nodded. "Okay," I said. "Let us try to find her." We started with the letters. The return address was in a town called Millbrook, Pennsylvania. I looked it up on my phone, and it was a small town about 3 hours away. The address was on Maple Street, number 42. I did a reverse address search, but the results were inconclusive. The house had changed hands several times over the years, and there was no way to know if Margaret and Thomas still lived there, or if they were even still alive. My mother called my father and explained what we were planning to do. I could hear his voice through the phone, concerned, cautious. He wanted her to slow down, to think about this, but she was determined. "We are going to Pennsylvania," she told him. "We're going to find out what happened." We left the next morning, early, before the sun was fully up. My mother drove, her hands tight on the steering wheel, her jaw set. We did not talk much. The radio played softly, some oldie station, and the landscape rolled past the windows, green and lush in the summer heat. We stopped once for gas and coffee, and my mother bought a map, even though I had the route pulled up on my phone. She wanted to see it, she said, wanted to trace the path with her finger. Millbrook was the kind of town that looked like it had been frozen in time. There was a main street with a diner and a hardware store and a post office, and the houses were old but well-maintained, with big front porches and flower gardens. We found Maple Street easily, and number 42 was a white house with blue shutters and a swing on the front porch. My mother parked across the street and turned off the engine. We sat there for a long moment, just looking at the house. What if no one is home? I asked. What if they moved away years ago? Then we will find out where they went, my mother said. She opened the car door and got out, and I followed her. We walked up the front path, and I could hear wind chimes tinkling somewhere in the backyard. The porch steps creaked under our feet. My mother hesitated for just a second, her hand raised a knock, and then she did 3 sharp raps that sounded too loud in the quiet street. We waited. I could hear a dog barking somewhere in the distance, and the sound of a lawnmower a few houses away. Then I heard footsteps inside, and the door opened. The woman who answered was old, maybe in her 80s, with white hair pulled back in a bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She was wearing a floral dress and an apron, and she looked at us with polite curiosity. "Can I help you?" she asked. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. I could see her struggling for words. Finally, she said, "I am looking for Margaret. Margaret and Thomas. They used to live here." The woman's expression changed, became more guarded. "I am Margaret," she said slowly. "Who are you?" My mother took a breath, and I saw her hands tremble. "My name is Linda Whitmore," she said. "I think you adopted my sister. In 1963. Her name was Sarah." The color drained from Margaret's face. She grabbed the door frame as if she needed support, and for a moment I thought she might faint. "Oh, my God," she whispered. "Oh, my God. Rose's daughter. You are Rose's daughter." My mother nodded, and I saw tears start to slide down her cheeks. "I just found out," she said. "I found letters in my mother's house. She died 3 months ago, and I did not know. I never knew I had a sister." Margaret's eyes filled with tears, too, and she reached out and took my mother's hand. "Come in," she said. "Please, come in. We have so much to talk about." The inside of the house was cozy and cluttered in the way that old people's houses often are, full of photographs and knickknacks and furniture that had been there for decades. Margaret led us to the living room and gestured for us to sit on a floral couch that matched her dress. She sat across from us in an armchair, and for a moment we all just looked at each other, not knowing where to start. "Sarah," my mother said finally, is she here? Can I meet her?" Margaret's face crumpled, and she pressed a hand to her mouth. "Oh, honey," she said. "Oh, I am so sorry. Sarah passed away. It was 3 years ago. Cancer." The words hit like a physical blow. I felt my mother sag beside me, felt the hope drain out of her. "No," she whispered. "No, that is not fair. I just found out about her. I was supposed to meet her." Margaret was crying now, too, tears streaming down her wrinkled cheeks. "I am so sorry," she said again. "She was a wonderful person. So kind, so full of life. She was a teacher. Did you know that? Elementary school. She loved children. She never had any of her own, but she loved her students like they were hers." My mother could not speak. She just sat there, shaking her head, tears pouring down her face. I put my arm around her, and she leaned into me, her body shaking with sobs. I looked at Margaret, and she looked back at me with such sadness, such compassion, that I had to look away. After a while, my mother got herself under control. She wiped her face with the tissue that Margaret handed her and took a shaky breath. "Tell me about her," she said. "Please. I need to know who she was." Margaret smiled through her tears. "She was beautiful," she said. "She looked like Rose, you know. Same eyes, same smile. She was smart, got straight A's all through school. She went to college, became a teacher, like I said. She married a good man, David, and they were happy together for 35 years before he died. She loved to read, loved to garden. She had the most beautiful roses. She named them after people she loved. There was a David Rose and a Margaret Rose and a Thomas Rose. Thomas was my husband. He passed 10 years ago. Did she know about Rose? My mother asked. Did she know about me? Margaret nodded. We told her she was adopted when she was young, maybe 5 or 6. We wanted her to know the truth. And we told her that her birth mother's name was Rose, and that Rose had loved her but could not keep her. We showed her the photograph, the one Rose sent with her. Sarah kept it her whole life. It was in a frame by her bed. My mother's face twisted. She sent a photograph. She asked, but she would not answer letters? She would not see her own daughter? Margaret sighed. I do not know what was in Rose's heart, she said. I wrote to her for years, begging her to reconsider, to at least meet Sarah once. But she never responded. After a while, I stopped trying. It hurt too much, and it was confusing for Sarah. She would ask why her birth mother did not want to see her, and I did not have an answer. There was a long silence, and then my mother said, Did Sarah ever try to find her? When she was older, Margaret nodded. When she turned 18, she hired a private investigator. She found out where Rose lived, got her phone number. She called once, and Rose answered. Sarah told her who she was, said she just wanted to meet her, just once, and Rose hung up on her. Just hung up without saying a word. Sarah was devastated. She never tried again. My mother made a sound, something between a gasp and a moan. I felt sick. How could Grandma Rose have done that? How could she have been so cruel? I do not understand, my mother said, her voice breaking. I do not understand how my mother could do that. She was not a cruel person. She was kind and loving. Why would she reject her own daughter like that? Margaret shook her head. I have asked myself that question for 60 years. She said, The only thing I can think is that there was something about Sarah's birth, something about that time in Rose's life, that was too painful for her to face. Some people, when they are hurt badly enough, they lock that hurt away and they never let anyone near it again. Maybe that is what Rose did. We stayed for another hour, and Margaret showed us photographs of Sarah. Baby pictures, school pictures, wedding photos. There was one of Sarah in her classroom, surrounded by smiling children, and she looked so happy, so alive, that it made my chest ache. My mother held each photograph carefully, studying Sarah's face as if she could memorize it, as if she could make up for all the years she had not known her sister existed. Before we left, Margaret went upstairs and came back with a small box. This was Sarah's. She said, handing it to my mother, I think she would want you to have it. Inside the box was a photograph that Rose had sent all those years ago, the one of the young woman holding the baby, our sweet girl. There was also a locket on a delicate gold chain, and when my mother opened it, there were 2 tiny photographs inside. One was of Rose, young and unsmiling. The other was of my mother, taken from one of the Christmas cards we had sent over the years. She had your picture, my mother whispered. She knew about me. Margaret nodded. After she found Rose, she found you too. She followed your life from a distance. She knew you had children. She knew about Claire and Marcus and Diane. She used to say she had a sister and nieces and nephews she would never meet, and it made her sad, but she understood. She did not want to disrupt your life. My mother closed the locket and held it tight in her fist. Thank you, she said to Margaret. Thank you for loving her. Thank you for giving her a good life. Margaret hugged her, and they stood there in the doorway for a long moment. 2 old women bound together by a secret that had shaped both their lives. Then we left, walking back to the car in silence. My mother did not start the engine right away. She just sat there, holding the box, staring at nothing. I am sorry, Mom, I said finally. I am so sorry. She shook her head. Do not be sorry, she said. I am glad I know. I am glad I found out, even if it is too late. At least now I understand. Understand what? I asked. Why my mother was the way she was, she said. Why she was so distant sometimes, so sad. She was carrying this secret, this grief, for her entire life. It must have been so heavy. We drove back to Grandma Rose's house in silence, and when we got there, my mother went straight to the basement. She stood in front of the open safe, looking at the empty space where the letters and the photograph had been. Then she closed the door and spun the dial, locking it again. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Putting it back the way it was," she said. This was her secret. She kept it locked away for a reason. Maybe it was the wrong reason. Maybe she should have told us. But it was hers, and now it is ours. We get to decide what to do with it. We went upstairs, and my mother called my father. She told him everything, and I could hear his voice through the phone, low and soothing. Then she called Marcus and Diane and told them too. Marcus was shocked, full of questions. Diane cried. They both said they wanted to come to the house, to see the letters, to understand. Over the next few days, the family gathered. Marcus drove up from Boston with his wife and 2 kids. Diane flew in from Chicago. My father came with my mother. We all sat around Grandma Rose's kitchen table, and we read the letters together. We looked at the photographs. We talked about Sarah, about the life she had lived, about the family she had never known. Marcus wanted to be angry. He kept saying that Grandma Rose had no right to keep this from us, that it was selfish and wrong. Diane was quieter, more thoughtful. She said she wished she could have met Sarah, wished she could have known her aunt. My mother did not say much. She just listened, holding the locket that Sarah had kept, running her thumb over the smooth gold surface. On the last day, before everyone left, we held a small ceremony in the backyard. My mother had brought a rose bush, a beautiful one with deep red blooms, and we planted it together under the old oak tree where Grandma Rose used to sit in the summer. We did not have Sarah's ashes, but we had her memory, and that felt like enough. "This is for Sarah," my mother said as we patted the soil around the roots. For the sister I never got to meet. For the aunt my children never knew. For the daughter my mother could not keep. We stood there in a circle, all of us, 3 generations of a family that had been broken by secrets and silence. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we could heal. Maybe knowing the truth, even when it hurt, was better than living with lies. After everyone left, I stayed behind to finish sorting through the house. It took another week, and every day I found something new, some small piece of Grandma Rose's life. I found more photographs, more letters, more evidence of a woman who had lived a long and complicated life. I found a journal from 1963, and in it, in Grandma Rose's careful handwriting, was a single entry dated May 15th. "Today I gave away my daughter. They tell me it is for the best, that I am doing the right thing, but it does not feel right. It feels like I am tearing out a piece of my own heart. I held her for just a moment before they took her away, and I memorized her face, her tiny nose, her perfect fingers, the way she smelled like milk and powder and something indefinable, something that was just her. I will never forget her. I will carry her with me for the rest of my life. But I cannot keep her. I cannot explain why, not even to myself. I just know that this is how it has to be. God forgive me." I read the entry over and over, and I cried for Grandma Rose, for the pain she had carried, for the choice she had made that had haunted her for 60 years. I understood now why she had locked the letters away, why she had refused contact with Sarah. It was not cruelty. It was survival. She had made a choice that broke her heart, and the only way she could live with it was to pretend it had never happened, to lock that part of her life away where she would never have to look at it again. But secrets have a way of coming out. They seep through the cracks. They whisper in the dark. They wait patiently until someone stumbles across them. And when they do come out, they change everything. I finished sorting through the house and put it on the market. It sold quickly to a young couple with a baby. And I like to think that Grandma Rose would have approved, that she would have been happy to know that there would be laughter and life in those rooms again. I took a few things with me when I left. The photograph of Sarah, some of Grandma Rose's jewelry, the journal, and the letters, all of them tied together with that faded blue ribbon. My mother kept the locket, and she wears it every day. She says it makes her feel connected to the sister she never knew, to the part of her family history that was hidden for so long. She has started going to therapy, working through her feelings about her mother, about the secrets, about the years of estrangement that now made a terrible kind of sense. Marcus has become obsessed with genealogy. He has been building a family tree, tracking down distant relatives, filling in all the gaps. He found Margaret's contact information and has been writing to her, and she writes back, sharing stories about Sarah, sending more photographs. It has become a kind of healing for both of them, a way to honor Sarah's memory. Diana's been quieter about it all, but I know it has affected her deeply. She told me once, late at night over the phone, that it made her think about her own secrets, about the things she keeps hidden from the people she loves. She said she did not want to end up like Grandma Rose, carrying pain alone until it calcified into something hard and cold. As for me, I think about that safe in the basement. I think about how easy it is to lock things away, to hide the parts of ourselves that are too painful or too complicated or too shameful to share. But I also think about what happens when those things stay locked away, how they fester and grow and poison everything around them. Grandma Rose made a choice in 1963, and it was a choice that affected not just her, but her daughter, her granddaughter, her entire family. We will never know exactly why she made that choice. We will never know what circumstances or fears or pressures led her to give Sarah away and then refuse all contact. But we know the consequences. We know the pain it caused, the relationships it fractured, the love that was lost. I went back to Boston and tried to return to my normal life. But everything felt different. I looked at my own relationships, my own secrets, the things I kept hidden even from the people closest to me. And I made a decision. I started being more honest, more open. I started sharing the hard things, the complicated things, the things I'd always thought I needed to keep to myself. It was not easy. Vulnerability never is. But it was worth it. My relationships deepened. I felt lighter, freer, less burdened by the weight of things unsaid. 6 months after I found the safe, I got a call from Margaret. She was in the hospital, she said, and she did not have much time left. She wanted to see us, wanted to say goodbye. My mother and I drove back to Pennsylvania, and we sat with her in her hospital room. She was tiny in the bed, her skin papery and thin, her breathing labored, but her eyes were still kind, still sharp. "Thank you," she said to my mother, her voice barely a whisper. "Thank you for finding me. Thank you for letting me tell you about Sarah. It means more than you know." My mother held her hand and cried. "Thank you for loving her," she said. "Thank you for giving her the life my mother could not." Margaret died 2 days later, and we went to her funeral. It was small, just a handful of people, but they all had stories about Sarah, about what a wonderful person she had been, how she had touched their lives. We listened to every story, and we cried, and we felt grateful that even though we had never met Sarah, we could know her through the people who had loved her. After the funeral, we went to the cemetery where Sarah was buried. Her headstone was simple, just her name and her dates, and a single line: beloved teacher, wife, daughter. My mother knelt down and placed a rose on the grave, one from the bush we had planted at Grandma Rose's house. "I am sorry I never got to meet you," she said. "I am sorry our mother kept us apart. But I want you to know that I would have loved you. I would have been proud to call you my sister." We stood there for a long time, the three of us, my mother and my father and me, and we said goodbye to a woman we had never known but who had become a part of our family anyway. And then we went home. Life went on the way it always does. The seasons changed. Holidays came and went. But we were different now. We carried Sarah with us, and we carried the knowledge of what secrets can do, how they can shape and warp and damage. And we tried, all of us, to be more honest, more open, more willing to share the hard truths. I think about Grandma Rose often. I think about the young woman she was in 1963, holding a baby she knew she could not keep. I think about the choices she made, the pain she carried, the love she locked away. And I try not to judge her too harshly. She did what she thought she had to do, and she lived with the consequences for the rest of her life. But I also think about Sarah, about the life she lived not knowing her birth mother, not understanding why she had been given away. I think about the phone calls she made when she was 18, the hope she must have felt, and the devastation when Grandma Rose hung up on her. And I think about all the years they could have had together, all the love that was lost because of fear and shame and secrets. In the end, that is what I learned from finding that safe in the basement. Secrets have a cost. They cost us connection. They cost us love. They cost us the chance to know and be known by the people who matter most. And sometimes that cost is too high. I keep the photograph of Sarah on my dresser now, the one of her in her classroom with all those smiling children. When I look at it, I see my grandmother's eyes looking back at me, and I see my mother smile. I see family, even though we never met. And I remember that family is not just about blood or genetics or who raised you. It is about love and connection and the stories we tell about where we come from. The house sold, and the new family moved in, and I hope they are happy there. I hope they fill it with laughter and warmth and love. I hope they never have to find a hidden safe in the basement, never have to uncover secrets that change everything they thought they knew. But if they do, I hope they handle it with grace. I hope they remember that everyone is doing the best they can with what they have. I hope they choose honesty over secrecy, connection over isolation, love over fear. Because in the end, that is all we have. The people we love, the stories we share, the truth we are brave enough to tell. Everything else is just noise, just clutter, just things we lock away in safes and hope no one ever finds. But someone always finds them. Secrets always come out. And when they do, we have a choice. We can let them destroy us, or we can let them teach us. We can let them drive us apart, or we can let them bring us together. My family chose to come together. We chose to honor Sarah's memory, to acknowledge the pain of the past, and to try to do better going forward. It was not easy, and it is still not easy. There are still hard conversations, still moments of anger and grief and confusion. But we are having those conversations. We are feeling those feelings. We are not locking them away in a safe in the basement. And that, I think, is what Grandma Rose would have wanted. Not the secrets, not the silence, but the love. The messy, complicated, imperfect love that families are made of. The kind of love that survives mistakes and misunderstandings and even betrayal. The kind of love that says, I see you, I know you, and I choose you anyway. That is the legacy I want to carry forward. Not the secrets, but the love. Not the safe in the basement, but the rose bush in the backyard. Not the silence, but the stories. And so I tell this story, Sarah's story, my grandmother's story, my family's story. I tell it so that it will not be forgotten, so that the pain and the love and the lessons will not be locked away where no one can find them. I tell it because stories are how we make sense of the world, how we connect with each other, how we remember who we are and where we come from. This is my story. This is my family's story. And now it is yours too. História finalizada.